Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, even when it's told via fiction, the truth is pretty strange. And if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains on not only their current projects, but influences, how they got started, and whatever, anything else we can think of, to be perfectly honest. We like to keep it light and conversational. And if you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, God knows we hope that you do because you are listening. You can do that over at Spotify, over at Apple, and you can find every single one of our episodes archived over at our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on social media, which would be awesome. You can do that at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at either @InSeats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, and dare I say most importantly, I say that a lot, but it's true, visit us over at intheseats.ca for all sorts of news, reviews from the world of cinema, television, and beyond. And we're going a little beyond on today's episode, but in a good way. On this episode, we are talking with writer-director Noah Hutton, whose film Lapsis is heading to virtual cinema this coming Friday. And it's a weird little movie. It kind of reminds me a little bit of some Spike Jonze, some Quentin Dupieux, a little bit, like a lot sort of mixed into one, as it follows this one guy who's struggling to support himself and his younger brother who has a sickness, and he takes a strange job in the realm of gig economy as technology is starting to evolve really fast. And it's a commentary on that, and a commentary on the gig economy and freelancing, and so very much more. And it straddles this really fantastic line between socially relevant but kind of deadpan funny and a little weird all at the same time. It's a glorious little piece of budget sci-fi, as it were, because they didn't have a lot of money, so they're not pouring money into effects. They're trying to sort of make it conceptual and make it something that makes you think long after you've watched the film. And I think Lapsis definitely does that. And we talk with Noah about that, and you know what got him started and some influences, and so very much more. And I hope you enjoy the conversation because, well, he was an interesting guy, and I know I enjoyed it. So, till the next time. But I mean, obviously, let me just say first off, thanks for the time today. I really do appreciate you coming on to talk about the film.
Oh, well, thanks for the time. I mean, I appreciate the coverage.
Now, I mean, obviously, first off, I really dug it. I really dug it. I mean, because I kind of love science fiction that almost feels like it's taking a step back technologically. And I mean, it's really got a really interesting sort of visual aesthetic to it all. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, walking you through the initial inspiration for the idea for the film.
Well, I think it comes like the subject matter of the film comes from being an independent contractor or freelancer for like a decade, and that's how I've supported myself. And I've never worked specifically in the gig economy, which people have written about the film already are taking it as just about the gig economy. But for me, it was just about kind of precarious freelancing lifestyles in general, writ large, and that's what I experienced in all through my 20s, and so the comment on what's happened with the gig economy is surely there too. I think the other place the movie comes from is the kind of like the more genre elements, the sci-fi elements of quantum computing coming around the corner. Thinking about what might happen if a quantum boom did happen, and letting the imagination run wild on that. And part of what inspired me, I think, for the world of the film is the fact that quantum computers require new cables to be laid. So if we did have a new infrastructure all of a sudden crop up based on quantum computing, they would need all this new infrastructure work. So I started to, and I love like blue collar sci-fi that deals with working people, and isn't maybe what I would call white collar sci-fi, like the people who are inventing the technology, having the breakthroughs themselves, benefiting from it mostly. So I like to see what happens like 5 or 10 years later when it trickles down and gets messy and gets dirty and busted up a little bit, and kind of like that cyberpunk aesthetic too.
Well, and I mean, there's something perversely enjoyable about having a science fiction movie set in the future, but 80% of it is in the forest.
Totally, yeah. I love the kind of retro futuristic aesthetic and moss and dirt on things, objects that were once shiny. So that's my favorite type of sci-fi.
Well, and I love how what that kind of lends to for from a visual design aspect as well, because it really allows you to create this worlds that are futuristic, but also not at the same time, if that kind of makes any sense. I mean, I
Yeah,
love sort of the marriage of those two ideas.
yeah, exactly. We during production we were always saying that this was set in a parallel present. That was the term we were using, and I like that because I think, but you get that feeling by having design elements that both feel, of the past, like late '90s style computing, and the robotics also feel kind of like one generation removed from our present.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you have this concept of quantum, which is still is a little bit out in front of us. So I am interested in that, like that tension of something from the future and something from the past in the same movie, because they kind of pull on each other, and as a result, I think you might be destabilized from knowing exactly where you are. Like, this doesn't really feel like the future. It's not the past though. So where am I? And that's like the sweet spot, I think, for sci-fi.
Well, and that really goes back to just sort of the whole themes around not just, independent contracting and the gig economy, which is the pull that so many people are getting from the film. It really does allow for, I mean, I guess the dark humor of the moment, but also sort of the dread at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I didn't want to, I don't love like uh full disaster dystopia. uh that's just not what really interests me, because it feels so far from our present.
Yeah.
It's almost like escapism. So it's so like easier to imagine, a full disaster than like something subtly changing in the society we actually live in. So that listen, there's a place for that, and there's an entertainment value to that. But I like making it feel somewhat close to our own world, so that you can use humor to poke at things that we are familiar in our day to day with. It's not like any of us are cablers, yet somehow this feeling of cabling, I hope, resonates. Why is it that pulling cable through endless woods feels somehow close to what a lot of us are doing? So I that's what I was interested in.
Well, and I mean, I think a lot of that comes through in just sort of the casting as well. And I mean, I love Dean in the lead. And talk to me a little bit about finding him, because he really does sort of capture a sardonic tone to like that you want to come across, but that you can still see how the character's kind of hesitant in this world at the same time. It makes for an interesting mix.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's never acted in any other film except for one short film about 10 years ago. He pivoted from wanting to be an actor originally to being a writer. And I've been friends with him for a number of years, and I just thought, I knew that he had the leading man energy and he could do this. And it was kind of just a gut instinct. And then as soon as we got into production, I was so over the moon with the performance he was giving for the film. I didn't really even have to, say much to him. He's got that everyman thing about him, and I think the audience can really go with him as the center of this movie, and you kind of as a result relax out of the need to fully understand the intricacies of the world, because you're kind of, as long as he's moving through, it's like okay. And he's got a wonderful sense of timing. I think he's fantastic. I hope that other people put him in movies now. I think he's a wonderful talent that should be seen more now.
When you're assembling something like this, how married are you to, say, the words on the page? Because I mean, especially while watching the film, there was a borderline almost sort of improv energy to some of the moments. It really felt very kinetic in moments, and just it had that very sort of snappy energy to it. And does that come through rehearsal, or do you sort of let the actors play in the moment?
Well, yeah, no, I honestly, I wish that we had more time for playing in the moment. But one of the things with this film is that we were pushing, and I think I think people do this all the time, and they're always pushing their budget further than their budget really maybe can go. But we were really trying to build this world in the forest with as much sense of scale as we could on our limited budget. As a result, we were pretty pressed for sticking on a rigid schedule. I didn't have much elasticity with scenes to do a few more takes if I wanted to keep going and try stuff. So to answer your question, what's in the film is pretty much exactly what's on the page.
Wow.
And there was not much improvisation at all. I mean, maybe a word or two here or there, but this came from a lot of drafts. I did work with Dean on the script level before we got into even rehearsal. He went through and we talked about the character, and I changed some dialogue based on our one-on-one conversations. But there are sections of the film with ranting cablers in the forest talking about this and that I hope do have that feeling of improvisation, because I think what you're responding to is just sort of like there's a kind of jazz element to it.
Exactly.
There's like a yeah, it's hard to even describe, but that I'm glad that came through, because I think that's what you try to do. If you write something, you want it to then continue to feel alive, not like someone just reading the written word,
No, for sure. And I mean, there is something else about the film like that I was really so impressed by, because and this is a trap that filmmakers can fall into, especially when working on a low budget or no budget kind of sci-fi thing, how they may try to sort of shoehorn in the occasional effect that doesn't really look like it's supposed to be there, or it just looks cheap because they didn't have enough money.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, how conscious were you, especially in pre-production, to be able to give this film scope but not make it feel cheap at the same time?
Yeah, right. No, that was the concern, because when you do try to push it, you have the dream of what this world could be if you had more money, and you try to push it there, that can be a fatal error. So you're totally right. There can be that like one shot that's that's VFX that you're just like,
that just takes you out of the movie entirely. Yeah.
Oh, they really had to like put an animated giraffe in like the back, like what? It's like, come on. But like we basically had a zero tolerance policy for visual effects. We didn't have the budget for it. I hate bad CGI. I just can't stand it. I think it immediately pulls the movie down for me whenever I see it. So we didn't even have enough money to get close to good effects. So why even try? So it had to be done practically. And that meant that for example, the robotics, these little carts moving through the forest, we had to find practical solutions for them, which we did. We found a lab at University of Pennsylvania that could make it a student project, so we didn't have to actually spend any budget on the robots.
Oh, wow.
The students got credit for controlling the robots on a movie set. It was like a new thing for them. And that was a godsend, and we wouldn't have, so we needed to find solutions like that to stay on our budget. So, and then it's just like other things like little hacks, the big metal cubes in the movie, that are kind of like our big production design element. We only had a budget to cover two sides of them with steel plating. So every time that we'd move the camera slightly, we would have to like rotate the cube. It was on a wooden frame. So it was pretty light, but we had to just like keep rotating it to keep the two sides that had actual steel in view. So just fun little, that's what we found ourselves doing. Ways in which we could try to keep the scale of the movie going and never fall into the trap of like, we'll add in something in the background later in post. Like, no, never.
Well, I mean, those are the joys of low budget filmmaking as well. It forces your creative mind to really sort of kick into overdrive.
Totally. And that's there's a scrappiness there that I think I'll probably always be nostalgic about moving forward now, but I hope to retain that energy too, because there's something that happens when everyone looks around and just goes like, well, we got to figure out how to make it work. And, there's no stepping back and just expecting someone else will fix it later on some other computer terminal. It's like, it has to happen right now. And that's wonderful.
Now, I mean, in this business especially, I always find that it's one of the rare ones that we always come to it as fans first. And I'm kind of curious from your perspective, thinking back in your life, is there a movie or a moment that you can sort of call the pivot point in your life that made you go, okay, I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a storyteller?
Uh, yeah, well, it's interesting. I came up more in making documentaries, so I kind of had my pivot point with documentaries where I remember, and I think it was seeing some of Herzog's documentaries that got me into the wanting to make docs, and then so that was I spent many years, but I always kind of wondered about making a narrative film, and then I would say the next pivot point for me happened when I really said like I have to do this. I have to try. Um, was seeing Leos Carré's movie Holy Motors
Oh,
around like I think it was like 2012 ish. And that film kind of blew me away. It was so bizarre, but there was like such an electricity of his ideas in that movie and the world building, and also just the like I loved how we had no idea really where we were, or but yet you felt like this was a fully conceived world. There was something profound about that film.
and you know what, man? I love that you say that because I mean, I got a lot of that energy off of Lapsis because especially when you're trying to do low budget science fiction, it allows the ideas to come through so much more clearly, which sometimes can get lost in sort of the effects driven science fiction films. And I mean, I
Yeah,
think that's sort of the magic of the genre that people tend to lose focus on, especially given, I mean, we all love Star Wars, but there's ideas behind Star Wars, which is what really connected us to the films. You know what I mean?
exactly. So people think if they can just recreate the visual spectacle of Star Wars in some other world, it's going to translate. But no, the ideas are the backbone of any story, and they have to be there for it to resonate. And then people don't. It hits on deeper levels than you even realize. But the ideas of science fiction were always what made me want to read sci-fi books as a kid. Um, there was something about the exploration of imagined worlds in sci-fi, and also just the rules of cause and effect that would expand your mind about what else is possible. Good sci-fi has a whole world of world building that doesn't even make it inside the frame. You want to feel like a person has fully lived in this universe, and that we're just seeing a little tip of the iceberg. And when you feel that, you feel like you're in such good hands, and it actually makes you want to rewatch it, reread it, and continue to explore it because there is depth there.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I'm kind of curious, and I think that leads into my next question. Like, do you see yourself going forward, sort of making more worlds like this, especially working on a budget and having to be creative? Or is there a $200 million script in your back pocket that you're dying to make?
No, I've already written another sci-fi script that is fairly like pretty much at this level, maybe a slightly bigger, but not much bigger. And I would hope to make that next. So I'm gonna try to. This is a place I want to operate at for a while at least. I don't have that $200 million script yet, but I do. I guess my dream project has always been the Arthur C. Clarke series Rama Rendezvous with Rama,
Oh, cool.
and it's kind of like a less well known series of his. Obviously, 2001: A Space Odyssey is the one for him, but this has never been made. I believe that Fincher has the rights to it, and was going to make it years ago with Morgan Freeman. It never happened, and they couldn't get a script that they liked, or at least that's what the internet says. But that if I could ever get to a place where I was able to make one of those movies or whatever, I would that would be a lifelong dream.
All right, final question, just a silly one, but just to put a bow on it. If you had to pick a desert island movie that was along the same lines of Lapsis that you would recommend to people, what would it be?
Uh, I think it would be being John Malkovich. That would be that there's a certain like scamminess to the world of being John Malkovich. Like there's a hustle, there's a and of course there's a profound sense of like rule breaking and world building that I could only hope to be in the same arena as that movie. That's an all-time classic to me. So that would be my pick.
Well, you know what? And I agree with that, because I mean, I definitely think Lapsis has a lot of that energy where there is this definitive world building, but it's also kind of taking the piss at the same time while still trying to say something real. And I think it's a great film. And I just want to say congratulations again. And thank you so much for the time today, man. This was fun.
David, thank you. Great questions. It was a pleasure to chat with you.
Cheers, man.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.